In the hushed abyss of the midnight sky, a glimmering beacon of humanity soared high above the clouds. This shining object was none other than Singapore Airlines Flight 319, a symbol of our technological prowess and our ceaseless ambition to conquer the skies. On this particular night, the date was the 2nd of October. The year was 2022. The aircraft had departed from the historical city of London, with its final destination being the metropolis of Singapore. What was intended to be a routine journey was about to transform into something far more memorable, a testament to the unpredictable nature of aviation. They were scheduled to operate a 13-hour direct flight towards Singapore Changi Airport. At the helm of this magnificent machine was an experienced duo of aviators, captain and his first officer. They were entrusted with steering the mighty Boeing 777-300ER, a testament to the wonders of modern aviation engineering. A marvel of modern engineering, cut through the clouds with grace, its passengers unaware of the ordeal that awaited them. This aircraft was not just a flight of fancy, but a tangible representation of human achievement in the field of aerial transportation. Under their command was an aircraft equipped with two colossal GE90-1115B engines, symbols of power and reliability, each capable of generating an astounding 115,300 pounds of thrust. The maintenance of the 777 had been carried out with a watchmaker's precision, ensuring that every component, every system, was in optimum condition. The crew, comprising of seasoned professionals, had been meticulously selected for this mission, their skills honed by countless hours of flight time. They were well rested and prepared their minds and bodies ready to tackle any challenges that might come their way. Their aircraft was powered by two massive GE90-115B engines, each capable of producing a staggering 115,300 pounds of thrust. The 777 had been meticulously maintained, and the crew was experienced, well-rested and prepared. As the crew got to the airport, after receiving a briefing pack, the pilots with the weather from their dispatcher, flight schedulers, NOTAMs, and other pertinent information, and they began carefully going through it. For the most part, the weather on the way appeared to be fine. But the arrival weather in Singapore appeared to be susceptible. Monsoon rains affecting Southeast Asia then resulted in Singapore experiencing its wettest October in 4 decades, by a few thunderstorms that happened in the afternoon, but the pilots weren't overly concerned, as the prediction additionally stated that the storms would only be transient and the visibility remained anticipated to be higher than the landing minima even during showers. The weather now calls for the constant need for an alternative to slightly surpass the anticipated weather for the final destination, which is to ensure that crews can land somewhere safely, even if the weather ended up being to arrive at the destination worse than anticipated. However, thunderstorms are infamously unpredictable. The planned alternative destination airports were Paya Lebar Air Base, Kuala Lumpur International Airport, and Senai International Airport in Johor, where there were also storm forecasts. However, they continued to function as backups. The plane had 106,164 of fuel before departing Heathrow Airport the day before, and the pilots were a 55-year-old captain who had a total flying time of 14,371 hours, and a 31-year-old first officer with a total flying time of 2,262 hours. The pilots were satisfied that there was no need for additional fuel, as there was no indication that weather along the flight route would result in a large diversion, and the thunderstorms at Changi forecast for the time of arrival were not severe enough to prevent the plane from landing. The 55-year-old captain of the flight had flown nearly 13,400 hours in total. Though he had operated the 747 before, his remarkable 10,075 hours on the 777 demonstrated his high level of experience. On this particular flight, he was paired with a 31-year-old first officer who had flown the 777 more than 2,200 hours, despite having far less experience. The 280 passengers were boarded by the cabin crew, who had been booked on the flight. After everything went according to plan, they finally retreated. Approximately on time and at 20:06, As the flight traversed into the airspace over the vast Indian Ocean, a seemingly endless expanse of turquoise water beneath them, it maintained a steady cruise at a lofty altitude of 35,000 feet. The atmosphere within the plane was serene and tranquil, reflecting the calmness of the ocean beneath. Passengers were engaged in various activities, some watching films, others reading or simply gazing out of the window, awestruck by the incredible views of the horizon. Soon as they arrived at Kuala Lumpur IFR, approach control from Singapore advised the pilots that an ILS approach was to be expected into runway 20 right, which in turn caused the first officer to begin preparations, and after that, inform the captain for the approach protocol and anticipated arrival. During that briefing, they talked about a fuel crisis, which seemed fine at the moment, and with about 7 tons of gasoline left in reserve. 24 kilograms of fuel was their last reserve, and it was clear that they were well above that. The captain of the aircraft must constantly ensure that there is sufficient gasoline to ensure a safe flight and arrive with more petrol than the last reserve. In other words, the 3,024 kilograms in this instance of final reserve ought to never be touched under normal conditions and need to be safeguarded at all times. Thus, before to take off, when we review the flight plan, additionally, we must ensure that the following fuel is present at least. The fuel that we use is taxi fuel. Then we need trip fuel, which is the quantity of fuel needed for the trip that the airplane must be flown in real life to arrive at the spot, then touch down. Backup fuel, which I previously discussed if there are any known delays, for instance fog or thunderstorms. Thus, that is the gasoline we require just to reach the target, but in addition, we also require what we refer to as alternative fuel, which comprises the required fuel to carry out a faulty strategy once there, followed by a climb, cruise, and descent in the direction of the other airport, after which there will be an approach and landing. Lastly, atop all else, the last reserve fuel is also required, which, as I previously stated, must never to be touched under typical conditions and ought to be sufficient in order to maintain the aircraft's flight 1,500 feet over the alternative airport for at least half an hour. At about 4 p.m., while the plane was in the air near Mersing, Malaysia, the pilots were told to expect to land on runway 20R at Changi Airport. At the time, the estimated fuel level of the jet on landing was 7,000 kiloliters, which was above the FRF requirement of 3,024 kiloliters. 5 minutes later, the crew were told that a strong tailwind and heavy rain would delay arrivals to Changi, and that there was also heavy rain over Paya Lebar Air Base and Sinai International Airport. The weather at Batam Airport appeared fine. As the weather in Singapore continued to get worse, all landings were temporarily held off to assess the situation. At 4:29 p.m., the SQ-319 flight crew were told to head to a waypoint near Batam and hold there. The pilots learnt en route that the weather at Batam Airport was still clear at the time. They also informed Singapore Air Traffic Control that they could execute a holding maneuver only once, as they would be down to emergency fuel after that. When an aircraft is approaching its destination, and all of a sudden a change in the runway or some unforeseen event, the pilots will then typically be positioned by ATC in what is referred to as a holding pattern. These are patterns created by racetracks, frequently established around a waypoint for RNAV, and they are available to enable the controllers of air traffic to reduce the speed of the traffic and establish sufficient space amid the aircraft that are approaching. The aircraft would be allocated a height to stay at while they are in the hold, and if further aircraft arrive after them, they will then be allocated to greater altitudes. Moreover, as everyone goes down in the hold, the airplane at the bottom of the stack will ultimately be directed toward the method. As they were completing this, the pilots asked for an update on Changi and said they could do another round before diverting to Batam. At 4:42 p.m., the pilots were told that Changi Airport was still unable to accept arrivals, and air traffic control was in the midst of coordinating a diversion to Batam. 2 minutes later, the flight crew made the decision to divert, even as it continued to ask if Changi could accept arrivals. At 4:53 p.m., the crew declared Mayday fuel, as the estimated fuel level on landing at Batam had now hit the FRF limit. The plane was given priority to land shortly after. By then, the weather at Batam had also deteriorated. After missing their initial approach into the airport due to strong winds, the flight crew tried at about 5:05 p.m. to land on runway 04 using the plane's automated landing system, which is typically used in low visibility. But the pilots had to perform a go-around after receiving a no autoland message, which, coupled with the low fuel situation, likely intensified their workload. The once serene environment inside the aircraft now buzzed with tension. Eyes turned to the cockpit, hoping for reassurance from the experienced crew. Inside the cockpit, a 55-year captain, a seasoned pilot with countless successful flights under his belt, assessed the situation with a calm, steely gaze. He had faced challenges before, but this was a different ballgame altogether. His mind whirred into action even as his years of experience kicked in. He reacted swiftly, initiating a sharp climb. In the face of adversity, the crew's training kicked in. This was not a typical day or even a typical flight. This was a moment when every ounce of their expertise, every minute of their arduous training would be put to the ultimate test. They were challenged by an emergency, an unexpected situation that required them to draw upon their years of experience. Their hearts pounded in their chests, their palms grew sweaty, and their minds raced. But they did not let fear take control. Instead, they focused on the task at hand. They declared an emergency and made the critical decision to redirect their course. Calculations were made, routes were evaluated, and only then was the decision taken, demonstrating the crew's unwavering resolve and unmistakable professionalism. At about 5:10 p.m., while repositioning the plane for another landing attempt, one of the pilots was told that the visibility at runway 22 was better, but the pilot informed controllers that there was insufficient fuel to reposition the plane again and that his next landing attempt had to be successful. It would test their mettle, their teamwork, and their ability to keep their nerves in check. The descent was more than just a physical journey. It was a psychological battle. But suddenly, the attempt failed after the crew got a warning that the plane was descending too quickly, and the pilot had to perform another go-around at 5:14 p.m. The 55-year capt done his fuel calculation. The fuel remaining on the plane was significantly below the FRF of 3,024 kg, and the FRF is called Final Reserve Fuel, or FRF. This is the absolute minimum required for an aircraft to remain airborne safely in case of delays. Consider that this was now a serious emergency, and the tank's fuel was running low fast, which the captain most likely knew all too well. As soon as the low fuel quantity alert appears was declared, there were currently furthermore additional procedures that the crew required consideration. The approach controller informed them that the wind was now 330 degrees at 15 knots. The crew quickly reconfigured the aircraft for the fourth approach, and luckily, the bad weather had now moved way further to the south. Beneath them, the ground seemed to rush up to meet the aircraft. But with each passing second, the crew's skill continued to shine through. The aircraft's design, a marvel of modern engineering, played a vital role. It worked in synergy with the crew's expertise, enabling them to harness its full potential. The landing was a chance to breathe, the culmination of their efforts. With hearts pounding and breaths held, they touched down, the rubber of the wheels meeting the solid ground of the runway. As the aircraft slowed, relief washed over them. They had landed safely, averting a potential disaster. Singapore Airlines Flight 319, a routine journey that turned into a night of high drama, ended with a sigh of relief. As the plane touched down, the passengers began to stir, their earlier anxiety replaced with an overwhelming sensation of relief. The aircraft cabin, once filled with the terrifying hum of a failing engine, now resonated with quiet murmurs and the occasional relieved chuckle. As the plane came to a standstill, the crew members began the procedure for disembarkation. They moved with the ease of professionals, their faces masks of calm belying the intensity of the situation they had just handled. The passengers, worn out yet grateful, looked at the crew with a newfound respect. They had just witnessed these individuals at the peak of their professionalism. Their quick thinking and calm composure had saved them from a potential disaster. The crew was hailed as heroes, their brave demeanor and composed handling of the situation being universally praised. The media channels picked up the story, their broadcasts filled with praise and admiration for the crew. The passengers, having recovered from the shock, started recounting their experiences. Each tale was filled with gratitude for the crew. Their quick thinking and calm under pressure had saved the day. The aftermath of the incident led to a thorough investigation. The authorities, along with experts from Singapore, the flight crew may have made a better choice, according to SIA, if it had been provided with pertinent information, such as being informed clearly that Changi Airport was delaying arrivals, the TSIB stated in its investigation. The Bureau believed that a landing at Changi should not have been guaranteed. Nevertheless, given the persistent reports that the airport was not accepting new arrivals, it said that after receiving comparable information, the crews of 3 additional aircraft were able to decide to divert early. More powerful and frequent storms are one consequence of climate change, according to TSIB, and this is predicted to make pilots' working environments more unpredictable. This story serves as a testament to the resilience of human spirit, the prowess of modern engineering, and the ever-present need for vigilance in the skies. It reminds us that even in the face of danger, with skill, courage, and a little bit of luck, we can find our way home. This was the incredible story of Singapore Airlines Flight 319, a flight that will forever be remembered in the annals of aviation history.